Later on, University of Louisville, this is what you don't know is that there were 2 days that the president's office was taken over at University of Louisville. Woodrow Strickland, nicest gentleman. He's one of the nicest people I've ever met. But the first day, which never gets talked about because we didn't get arrested, no one got arrested that day, I was in that group. So a group of us took over the president's office, and I'll never forget this because Woodrow Strickland, when he realized what was going on, said, "Have a seat." and then when I guess who was outside was trying to figure out how we're going to expel these folks, he would say, well, he didn't use these words, more like, well, calm down, well, I'll talk with them, something like that. Well, we had blockaded the door, and we'd done everything. We had some students, because we were, in that mode. This was sort of during the Black Power.
And what were you all trying to accomplish with the taking over the president's
At that time, we were trying to get a Black Studies program going there. In fact, that process was the genesis of that. I think it gained great impetus when the individuals that went in, including my good friend now deceased Blaine Hudson, and some others were arrested on that second day. It took on another character in terms of getting that happen. But we were after that. We wanted more students, African-American students, admitted into the school at that particular time. It was those kinds of grievances that we had. But a lot of interesting things happened. I remember the football players. Some of the white students on campus were irate, and they were going to, I guess, storm the Bastille or whatever. But I'll never forget this. For the linemen that were playing for the University of Louisville came, and out of nowhere, they weren't even involved in this, okay? They never had come to any meetings we had, nothing like that. They came and lined up in front of the door and just folded their arms, like that, like you had to come past us. That was interesting. So, there was a high consciousness in the community, in the Black community. People were saying, don't get involved with those rabble rousers. I sent you to school to get an education. And when that next class came in, which was a nice influx of Black students, guess what? There's nothing like success to undermine something you're trying to do, right? Because their parents sent them and said, now don't get in trouble when you go to school. We were looking at these people.
Opened the doors for them.
We were thinking, we're going to have recruits, we can press this thing further. But their parents were saying, I think rightfully, go in there and get your education. That's what we were doing that for. So ironically, think about it. Bobby Martin, who was involved in that, one of those that got arrested during that particular time, ends up being a doctor in Hawaii. Blaine Hudson, who ends up being the dean of arts and sciences schools. Not everybody fared that well. Gerald Neal, who was in there the first day, ended up being an attorney and developing law firms and practicing law even today, et cetera, et cetera. So when I look back through that, I said, wow. Boy, we were some lucky guys, because at that time, we did not have a clue what the outcome would be. And the general, the standards that were established in the community were hostile to anything like that. In fact, at that time, there was a debate as to whether, I was in law school at the time, so they were debating whether they were going to kick me out of law school, because I had, according to somebody's interpretation, had engaged in violence. I guess arguably that was true. But the dean of the law school at that time and Woodrow Strickland at that time forbade it. So they didn't allow that. So, my outcome could have been quite different if it was not for the same people we were blocking in his office, a Woodrow Strickland who had a sense of history, a sense of decency, and a sense of, there must be some change here, or a law school dean who liked to talk about his days in New Mexico more than the law, at least when he was talking to me, but at the end of the story telling me going and enrolling in class. I had to think about that. But we had quite an involvement in things from the civil rights piece. My sisters, my brother, throughout that process.